Here we go. We are off and rolling with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and we welcome you to the program as we are loaded for bear. It is a Tuesday. John Adams will join us very shortly, so looking forward to that. And we've got a lot to talk about, as you might imagine, we look back on the season, and we will talk about some of the dumb decisions that are out there. First of all, I ask you, Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. Battled a little bit of a cold yesterday, and I am good to go and ready for Alabama week. So a lot on the program as we will look forward to Alabama. Also plan to be joined by one of our good friends, columnist with Gannett News Service, and Blake Toppmeyer will join us later in the program. Can Tennessee win with just defense? I don't think that they can. I think they're going to have to score a few more points, so we shall discuss that. Also, seems like everybody wants to make a comparison with Joe Milton and somebody else. We've heard the comparisons basically the same as Hendon Hooker. That came from Nick Saban. Also, we've heard that Joe Milton is Cam Newton at the Knoxville Quarterback Club. I don't see him being any of those guys. Somebody I had to pick Newton. Also, James Pearce was named the co-defensive lineman of the week. Congratulations to him. Dee Williams named co-special teams player of the week. And Brock Bowers' injury, what that means for the SEC East. It means more than any other tight end that I could possibly think of. And we'll have Football IQ coming up every Tuesday, which talks about the dumbest coaching moves of the weekend, which aren't really difficult to come across. Did you have any struggles whatsoever coming across some dumb coaching moves of the weekend?
I had a few, Dave. I will say that, but it wasn't as bad as last weekend. I'm going to give coaches a break. It was based on the standard of how dumb some of the decisions coaches genuinely make are. I don't think it was as bad as it was a week ago, but there were still some that really, really stood out.
Okay, here we go. Let's get rolling with John Adams joining us now. And John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks.
Appreciate that. And we've got it up and rolling as we're going to discuss first, right off the top, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. Are they just blatant liars, or do they not pay attention? John, Nick Saban said that he doesn't see any differences between Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're both human. Other than that, well, let's face it. I mean, we talk about Caleb likes to bring out dumb coaching moves. What if we did a segment on coaching lies? All coaches lie. It's just part of the gig. They have to lie. They say great things about opponents. They say things that aren't true. They say things about their own players that aren't true. Go back to preseason when Tennessee, the Oregon transfer, Dante Thornton, the wide receiver, was made out to be the second coming of Randy Moss. He can barely get on the field even when Tennessee loses its best receiver in Brew McCoy to injury. That's just the way the game is played. That makes no sense. I mean, Joe Milton isn't Jarrett Garantano.
Yeah, no. Wow. Let's get into that for a second. And I like how you reference Dante Thornton. He does. He's more like Randy Drops instead of Randy Moss. As far as Cam Newton, should we put those?
Yeah, come on.
Should we put those comparisons aside? Because John, yes, the two might line up and in a straight line be able to run the same 40 time. They might be very similar in arm strength and all that, but I think people forget that Cam could throw the ball with a whole lot of touch.
Cam Newton probably had the most dominant season in SEC history. I've seen all the great quarterbacks dating back for 50 years. And that one season when Cam led Auburn to a national championship, He was phenomenal. He did everything. I can still remember him going out, splitting out wide to the right, go to the Wildcat package, catches a touchdown pass over 2 defenders. Just an amazing athlete. As you said, great touch. I remember in an SEC championship game against South Carolina, last play of the game, launches a Hail Mary. He flipped his wrist, 50 yards, boom, touchdown. No, that's just a really silly comparison. I don't know why anybody would say that. They're both tall.
Yeah, and let's remember, Caleb, Urban Meyer has a lot of football to watch to be an analyst. Is he watching each and every game? Caleb, I doubt it very seriously.
No, he's not. And to his credit, he said he's not watching as much Tennessee, but he based this off of Joe Milton's size and things like that. But Urban Meyer did coach against, he didn't coach against Joe Milton because he was already gone by the time Joe Milton was at Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. But at the same time, he's familiar with Joe Milton because I'm sure he knew him on the recruiting trail from 2018. So I think Urban Meyer is just flat out lying on that. And I mean, honestly, I think Nick Saban's lie was worse. I'll just tell you guys that right now. I think it was even more embarrassing because he is studying Joe Milton.
Yep. Go ahead and get on board now. Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Talking Joe Milton, and it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, service in the biz, and it's not even close. That's AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in his office, and he will take care of you. He has done so for me. Best realtor in East Tennessee, no question about it. John, so where are we with Joe Milton? It has become readily apparent to me, as I reported a long time ago, that it is Joe Milton's job to not only lose, but have to give away practically. And I don't see any change with Nico or anybody else out there. We had some people in the message board asking, could Gaston Moore do the same thing that Joe Milton's doing now? I kind of giggled at first, but could he?
Dave, he went 11 of 22 for 100 yards against Texas A&M. He threw a perfect interception to an A&M safety in the end zone when Tennessee was knocking on the door and trying to put the game away. He made 2 boneheaded plays on the sidelines. Once when he just ran out of bounds, when a first down was hanging in the balance and he just drifted to the sideline, almost as though there was a magnetic pull forcing him to go there. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, he decides to throw the ball before he goes out, and he throws it to a player out of bounds. Then there was a play where Tennessee the other team was obviously offsides. Fans have become attuned to that. Okay, they're offsides, free play. What does he do? He runs out of bounds. Then there was bizarre play when he had contact on the sideline, is standing over defender. I don't know why he wasn't called for unsportsmanlike conduct. He was taunting the player. Quarterbacks don't do that stuff. Wide receivers do, DBs do, but quarterbacks just don't do that kind of thing. I don't know how much worse he has to be for Tennessee not to make a change, unless maybe Nico's not what we were led to believe he is.
May I say, Caleb, that I said this, and I'm not trying to break my arm, pat myself on the back. It would take something massively huge. Maybe it was last week, but I don't think it was even that big for Joe Milton to lose this starting job. Maybe you can back me a little bit on that. I said that in the preseason, it would take something monstrous for Joe Milton to be replaced by Nico. But I'll ask you the question. I mean, could Gaston Moore do the same thing that Joe Milton's doing right now?
Yes, he could. And again, this goes back to my biggest criticism of Heupel's talent evaluation. To ever think Joe Milton was better than Hendon Hooker. And John, that's where I wanted to get with you was, what was dumber, Urban Meyer comparing Joe Milton to Cam Newton, or Nick Saban saying Joe Milton is no different from Hendon Hooker when Nick Saban's watching Joe Milton?
No, Nick Saban clearly wins the dumb contest. But you got to keep in mind, what are these coaches trying to accomplish there? I mean, Urban Meyer's not a coach right now. Maybe he's trying to, I don't know, just be a nice guy or something, being complimentary before a Tennessee crowd. Who knows what? But how you could seriously say that is beyond me. But for Nick Saban to do it, but Caleb, you know how coaches are getting ready to play a game. I mean, they lavish praise on every opposing player. I remember one time I listened to Vince Dooley press conference. I was in Athens, Georgia, and Georgia was getting ready to play an FCS opponent. Not a good FCS opponent, a bad FCS opponent. And he honestly made that team sound like the New England Patriots at their highest peak in dynasty days. That's just what a lot of coaches do. And apparently that's what Nick Saban's doing. He's going old school with lavish the opponent with praise. And I don't know what that accomplishes, but good for him. Like if he said something critical, that would fire up Tennessee. Like if he told the truth.
Well, you don't have to criticize. Just don't lie. Just say they play great defense and they can move the ball on the ground and they're a threat. But you don't have to sit there and say Joe Milton is the same as Hendon Hooker. And again, and Dave, you've covered football, so this goes back to Josh Heupel starting Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker 2 years ago. Are coaches seeing something in Joe Milton that we as fans just know is not true? Is there like some coach love with Joe Milton?
John, along those lines, I think it's pretty simple now. The guy's probably a really good practice player. But when the lights come on, he's a different guy, reactionary and upstairs.
Yeah, I've heard that Joe Milton does fine in practice, does well, and yeah, preparation and those kind of things. But let's face it, I mean, the best players answer the bell. They raise their game. Of course, I mean, Tom Brady was the very best at that. But I don't see what I don't understand about Joe Milton, and it goes back to 2 years ago. One of the most flagrantly bad decisions I've ever seen on a football field was when he ran out of bounds against Ole Miss on the last play of the game. I mean, you're losing. You got to just chunk it in the end zone, hope for an interference call, hope for the best. But just the lack of field awareness, and maybe that doesn't show up in practice. But
I rack my brain a little bit because Caleb asked me about a week ago, is there a player that was better in practice than he was in games? And one I came up with was Brent Schaefer, who was as good as Eric Ainge perhaps in practice at times, especially with his athletic ability, but he was not nearly as good in games as he was in practice. He was really good with a baseball bat as he was approaching other college students, John.
Hey now.
Yeah, he could, not a big guy, but he could hit the long ball, so to speak.
Chicks love the long ball.
Except they also love Derek Jeter, who's the most overrated player ever and couldn't hit the long ball, but different story.
You will shut your mouth now.
That's a permanent ban material there, isn't it, Dave?
I know where you live. I will be at your house by the end of the day. All right.
He's not a top 5 Yankee of all time.
He does a nice commercial, though.
He does. All right. James Pearce named co-defensive lineman of the week. Dee Williams named co-special teams player of the week. That leads us to today's tough question. And today's tough question is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Basically the halfway mark. You got a bye behind you. You got a tough road to hoe. So I'm going to ask today's tough question as this, and it's pretty easy. Who has the biggest impact on all of Tennessee's football team for the remainder of the season? And I'm going to go first because I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's James Pearce. And here's my reasoning behind that. I think he's got 2 strip sacks in him at least. I think he is a phenomenal player that's been compared to Leonard Little and former players like Spencer Riley and Fred White have backed me on that. I think he is the guy that Tennessee leans on to win games that perhaps they shouldn't, which would be an Alabama or a Georgia, and close out the season, the second half, winning games that they should going away. So I think of all the players out there, it'll be James Pearce. I would have said Brew McCoy before he got hurt. So, John, we know that Pearce wins co-defensive player of the week awards by the SEC. Dee Williams, which they refused to play on offense, co-special teams player of the award. Who has the biggest impact in terms of wins and losses for the remainder of the season? And if you want to, you can even go negative in that Joe Milton might not play well in a game and cost them one or two losses. So what say you, John? Then I'll go to you, Caleb.
I thought you were going to compare James Pearce to Cam Newton. I'll go with the player that I think's had the most impact on the first half of the season, and that to me is Cooper Mays. The difference in Tennessee's run game and its overall offensive line play with Cooper Mays is honestly pretty stunning. Tennessee just ran for 232 yards against one of the best run defenses in the country. Alabama couldn't run the ball against Texas A&M. Nobody else has, really. That Miami threw the ball spectacularly against the Aggies. But Cooper Mays, the difference he makes is just, I guess I'm playing to your show because he's a member of your team here. But I just think the difference Cooper Mays makes is tremendous.
Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Cooper. I will do that as soon as I get off the show. I think
you can do it now.
Oh, okay. James Pearce, so he plays like somebody that should be playing at Alabama, Georgia. He's the kind of player that Tennessee is accustomed to playing defense against them that just absolutely wrecks their offense. So yeah, he's a terrific player, and I can certainly see why you would single him out.
All right, Caleb, how about you? Who has the biggest impact in the second half of the season? I should have gone Cooper because he said this for me.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks, Coop. What do you got there, Caleb?
Well, I want to for my OCD purposes, and since we mentioned him, I want to say Dee Williams, but I just can't because they're not going to use him on offense. And how many times are you going to get a chance to run one back for a touchdown? So between James Pearce and Cooper Mays, I got to side with John, Dave. It's Cooper Mays. Because I don't think I got to be honest. I thought Tennessee's run game was highly overrated heading into the Texas A&M game because Cooper Mays had played one game, and before that, the only team that was legitimate with any legitimate run defense they played was Florida, and they got stuffed. So the question was, can their run defense play well, or can their run game, can their run offense play well against a good run defense when Cooper Mays is in the game? And they showed me they could. And they showed me this is a legit run game. I don't think they don't win that game on Saturday without Cooper Mays. And there's no debating that. Mostly because one of the things that was missed in the Texas A&M game was they didn't actually score on a lot of possessions. Obviously, they only had one offensive touchdown. And really the offense only scored 10 points legitimately. The other 10 were set up by turnovers and a punt return. But they stayed on the field a lot of times and they moved the ball. And that was a huge help to the defense in stopping the run a lot of times. So I'm going Cooper Mays.
So guys, let me throw this out there. And maybe I should have gone Cooper because I don't think Tennessee beats A&M without Cooper, to be real honest with you. So who's third? If it's not Cooper, if it's not James Pearce, who's right behind that? I would have to say most impactful is Joe Milton, but I don't mean it in a positive way.
That's a good question. I think there's a drop off there. I think Omari Thomas is playing well on defense. I might kind of lean toward him because it's not just James Pearce. I mean, the overall surge in that line, and you saw it against Texas A&M. Max Johnson, Texas A&M quarterback, who I give a lot of credit, as I did Spencer Rattler, for simply surviving a Saturday in Neyland Stadium with that rush. Just overall surge. I think Omari Thomas is a really good player, so I might go with him offensively. Maybe Jalen Wright. I think Jalen Wright is now making plays. I mean, I thought of him as a solid SEC running back, but now I see him as more than that. I saw him as a guy who could get what the defense gave him, what his offensive line gave him. But now he's making plays, he's breaking tackles, he's got really good running instincts. So I really raised my opinion of him, and so either one of those guys, I guess, would be my pick.
Yeah, and to the message board, Travis says team fell apart without Cooper. That's true. If I could change my vote, it'd probably be that. And look at this. I never thought we'd see this. Kamal Hadden gets a vote. We were absolutely beating him up, and suddenly he's become one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Is that too strong?
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
You're not a Kamal Hadden fan, John?
No, I mean, I just don't think he's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. He's playing better, but I wouldn't consider him one of the better cornerbacks in the league. A lot of good cornerbacks in this league.
I think
it does reflect what a pass rush can do for your secondary.
Yep,
it does.
Absolutely.
And we also have to take one of the things we have to do. Cooper Mays' play was more impressive than the pass rush last week, because we have to remember Texas A&M has a right tackle, Chase Basantis, I think, who probably should just hang it up and never play football again. The way he's looked the last 2 weeks, I mean, it's the worst play I've ever seen by a blindside tackle in the.
So you're saying he could? Are you saying he couldn't start for South Carolina's offensive line?
Ouch. No, I don't think he could. He was horrible. You know what his PFF grade was on this over the weekend, John?
No.
23. What? 23. You know what it was the weekend before? 17. That's on a scale to 100.
I hope his family doesn't subscribe to that.
Wow. If John, let me ask you this. James Pearce will win more games for the Vols than Joe Milton will lose more games for the Vols. That's toughy thinking.
Yeah, I just think it's a really odd question. I don't think of it as being tough, just an odd question. Comparing a defensive player to the quarterback. I think right now, after watching the A&M game, I would say that that Joe Milton, if he plays the rest of the way, would lose more games than James Pearce wins.
Time for what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
What the H brought to you by our friends at City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Brock Bowers, give us the latest, Caleb, on his injury. What do we have with Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia? How long is he out, as he was banged up on Saturday?
So Brock Bowers is out for a few weeks, is basically the official position, which isn't an official number, but he had a high ankle sprain and he had to have surgery. It was in the first half of Georgia's 37-20 win over Vanderbilt. The recovery time is about 4 to 6 weeks. That's before he can get to be 100%. But as we know, Brock Bowers, from the Tua Tagovailoa injury in 2019, that can be a nagging injury that slows you for the rest of the year too. So,
well, and the Cedric Tillman last year too was a high ankle injury. He had the rope procedure or whatever that's called. Boy, that worked out real well. And I think Brock Bowers opens up an opportunity for Tennessee to beat Georgia. That sounds insane-o, but I'm not 100% sold on Carson Beck. I think Brock Bowers was the guy you check down and you save a play with. And to say that a tight end could affect who wins the SEC East or SEC overall sounds insane-o, but Brock Bowers being out for an extended period of time and quite possibly the Tennessee game, I think it's huge. That's a tight end. So what the H, but I think it holds some merit. You?
Has insano become a word? Did I miss that grammatical transition?
It's big with the 45-year-old plus demographic.
Okay, so it's like it's worse than just being insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a whole nother step. I'll remember that. It's when you really Insano is when you really affect society. Insane is just when you're hearing voices and you don't actually act it out.
It's like when you say bizarre and then you move it up to bizarro.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What was the question? Oh, no. Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, you can't just think of him as a tight end. I mean, he does everything, and he draws double coverage. He's a terrific blocker on the edge, which tight ends are supposed to be able to do. Has the best hands in the league, can run. I hadn't seen anybody catch him yet. He runs like a wide receiver. If you put him in the backfield, he might be Georgia's best running back. That's all that Georgia loses. Everything is built around him, and he is the player that opposing teams scheme for. I mean, Brock Bowers is so impressive. I kind of wonder if maybe he said, I'll do the surgery on myself right here on the sidelines and fix this and come back and play in the second half. He's Superman. So does this – it gives Tennessee hope? You bet it does. It gives everybody hope on Georgia's schedule. Georgia can't afford to sleepwalk through a game like it did at Vanderbilt's construction site Saturday. He's got – they've got to tighten things up and play every game as though that championship really is on the line, because he's a big loss. It helps that Ladd McConkey has returned to health at wide receiver. Without the two of them, they would be more vulnerable than ever. But that's a big loss, and it's a big loss for college football. I love watching that guy play.
Great. Caleb?
Yeah, John, I would add that before I ask you my question, that I'll tell you both. I think the scariest part for Georgia about Brock Bowers getting hurt is it forces Mike Bobo to use his brain again. And that's going to be really rough. But I will say, John, do you think that they could even – are we sure they're going to be undefeated even before they get to Tennessee? Like, I know whatever you think about Billy Napier in Florida, they're coming off a bye in 2 weeks. So will Georgia. That game's in Jacksonville. Then they have Missouri, and then they have Ole Miss. Without Brock Bowers, if they play down to any of those opponents, they could slip up, couldn't they?
Certainly against Ole Miss. You got to keep in mind, Georgia's defense, this Georgia defense is not last year's defense, and it's not the 2021 Georgia defense. Georgia is not as good at what it doesn't have the running back depth or the overall talent at running back that it had in either years. And it doesn't have Stetson Bennett to make just game-turning plays in the clutch time after time. And now it doesn't have Brock Bowers. I thought when you have a player like Brock Bowers on your bad days, on those off days, when you're kind of drowsy, wandering through all that construction going on at Vanderbilt Stadium, trying to not hoping nothing falls on your head. When you're going through all that, you can depend on Brock Bowers. You certainly saw that again, the win over Auburn, a come from behind win over Auburn. This is a huge loss. Other than losing a quarterback, there's no bigger loss in college football to me.
Did you hear the latest that Vanderbilt did get a title sponsor for their stadium? It's going to be the Lee Construction Stadium.
I love that. I thought they might call it, maybe instead of the, how Florida became the Swamp. I wonder if Vanderbilt Stadium could become the Crane.
It's very nice. It's very nice. So for those that don't know, Vanderbilt refurbishing their stadium instead of blowing it up, which they should. And the stadium is undergoing construction during the season, which is usually frowned upon. You like to get that done before the season begins, but good for Vanderbilt. They've got a whole new way of going about things. Let's just work on it. Maybe they could start wearing big orange construction caps instead of helmets, John.
Yeah, wear those yellow construction helmets. Well, they are yellow and black or gold and black. So, yeah, it's an atmosphere killer. There's no doubt about that. Another atmosphere killer. Can you imagine Ken Seals, Vanderbilt's quarterback, is trying to quiet the Georgia crowd there so he can call plays? It's down there in the end zone.
Back to Bowers. G. Smith says Bowers only accounts for 26% of his passes. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Okay, I see that number, but 26% for a tight end is a lot. Number one. Number two, he is also getting other people open by drawing extra attention, right?
Yeah, the whole receiving core benefits from his very presence. And I will say that Georgia has another good tight end in Oscar Dell. He's a promising player, but he just can't do all the things that Brock Bowers can. Neither can any other tight end in college football.
No,
Well,
I mean Brock Bowers is a special talent. Sorry, Caleb.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's 5 stars for depth, but then there's special players that go beyond just your average 5-star. Eric Berry wasn't just a 5-star safety. He was a special safety, and there was no 5-star safety that could just come in and replace him if he got hurt at Tennessee. And
that's a really good call. And you're talking about an Eric Berry who was honored the other day, is that he wasn't just a safety. Like Bowers isn't just a tight end. I mean, Eric Berry, you could have put him at running back. He could have played anywhere on the field. You could have put him at linebacker. He could play cornerback. Played quarterback in high school. He's the kind of guy that just impacts the game no matter where he is. And one of the biggest collisions I've ever seen in college football was between him and Tim Tebow there in the swamp. But yeah, you're right. Those kind of players, though, they don't come along every year.
Hey, John, I want to get off topic for a half second. Who is the best player that you covered that was also he was a great player, but he was a great person? Because we discussed last week, mine was Eric Berry. He had to answer questions because he didn't really have a quarterback that could do so in place for most of his career, and they weren't good. And he always came out there and he answered the questions. But you've covered the Steelers, you've covered other teams. Who is the best dude out there that was also a very, very good player?
Yeah, well, Eric Berry comes to mind. That's something I'd have to covered a lot of ground there, Dave. I've covered a lot of players, but you know what? I'd go way back. Talk about going old school. I'll go beyond old school. I'll go old school O, kind of like Insane from Insane O. Okay, I'd go back to Archie Manning.
Wow.
Yeah,
you did go back there, John.
He took a lot. I've heard from a lot of New Orleans media. He took a lot of heat and always would stand and talk to everybody after every Saints loss when it wasn't his fault that they were losing.
I can remember. Keep in mind, he was a legend at Ole Miss. A legend. They named the speed limits are 18 miles per hour now on campus because of Archie Manning's number. Then he goes to New Orleans where he's expected to be saviors. There are no saviors for those Saints. They were too bad and too conditioned to losing. So he actually made All-Pro one year and was Offensive Player of the Year. Incredible achievement. But as Caleb pointed out, I've been in that locker room. It was almost like everybody else was gone. It was after another Saints defeat. Never had a winning season when he played. And there'd be little kids running around in the locker room. And there was Archie Manning there at his cubicle talking to some guy who might be working for a student paper. He never, ever changed. He was that way, loss after loss, game after game, season after season. And also, he's one of the best storytellers of any football players I've ever been around, in the sense that he had a great memory for details. And one of my favorite conversations with him was talking about all the weird stuff that happened with the Saints. And he had a really good memory for that. So he really stands out. I know it's a completely different era, but he was just a tremendous player and a great person, and a great person to have in your locker room.
Interesting stuff. Be sure and click that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, we need you to do so. Also, a special announcement: if you would like to order my book, which John's already read 5 times and absolutely loves it, you can get autographed copies by the players involved, including Fred White now, Billy Ratliff coming down the line, also autographed copies by maybe a guy who wore 27. We're working on that. So you can order autographed copies. It's never too early for the holidays because I don't think we're going to have a ton of autographed copies. So go ahead and do that. you can click on the link right below. So, John, changing gears on you a bit, it's time for Just Dumb Coaching Decisions, which we see. It's our football IQ segment, which is taking the internet by storm. John, I know you've probably got a couple that you want to throw out there, but we're going to get to those here momentarily, and we're going to discuss some really dumb coaching decisions, and there are quite a few. Prime time makes the dumb list. After this, 2 minutes with John Adams, Off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vols collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow, that is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, fill it in on the message board. Dumb coaching decisions. It's our football IQ segment, as there are a lot of coaches that may be lacking a couple of points on our football IQ segment. As we look back on the weekend, John, any stand out to you? Because Caleb loves pointing out when people look dumb, so we have plenty to go to, but I'll give you the first crack at this.
Well, thanks. And Caleb does a really good job of specific plays, specific boneheaded plays where everybody watching is going, what the H? Jimbo Fisher, or maybe call him Dumbo Fisher now, just really sticks out. He just really sticks out to me, not just because he's the most overpaid football coach in college history, and not for just one blatantly awful decision he made Saturday against Tennessee, but the game was a continuation of the Alabama game as far as A&M is concerned. A&M could have won both games. It could have beaten Alabama. It could have beaten Tennessee. Jimbo just seems so disengaged. It's kind of like, hey, I'm just a coach. What am I supposed to do about this? And maybe some of this is on Bobby Petrino, but how can you not make a greater effort to get Anaya Smith the ball? He's one of the premium playmakers in the country. Do a jet sweep, running 5, put him in the backfield in the Wildcat 5 times. Do anything, throw a bubble screen. It was almost I feel like Jimbo Fisher's instructions to quarterback Max Johnson, who I thought played a really tough game against all odds and with virtually no help, except from that right tackle that Caleb gave so much praise to. I just thought It's as though Jimbo handed Max Johnson the football and said, "Go get him, kid. See you after the game. It's your baby."
Yep. Jimbo gets a.
You suck.
All right, Travis.
That always makes me laugh, Dave.
I know it's hard to beat, and it's right after the point where Bob Barker, rest his soul, fights Happy Gilmore. Which, yeah, you want a piece of me? I don't want a piece. I want the whole bit. Bob Barker, by the way, did you know that he was a boxing champion in the Army? John, you were in the Army.
Fortunately, I didn't have to box anybody. I got just about knocked out by a pugil stick by a Texas Southern nose tackle. But
a lot of people don't know. John was a war hero. If not for John, we'd all be speaking English right now.
No, you'd all be speaking Nebraska-ese because the Cornhuskers would have invaded Kansas in my post at Fort Riley.
Where he was stationed. During Vietnam, John was approximately 6,000 miles away. Mel Tucker says hi. Kirby Smart haircut, not a good decision. We've got a lot of people that are throwing it out there as far as dumb coaching decisions. Our football IQ segment is brought to you by our friends at Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer one school at a time. We're working with private schools, but we're going to get those public schools involved. Herald GRP, heraldgrp.com. Go to your school administrator. Say, I want my children to be safe with highly trained security individuals, and we'll get this done in public schools as well. Caleb, let's go football IQ. Who have you got? Who made the dumbest decision over the weekend?
Well, do you want me to start from the least dumb or from the dumbest? Because I could the least dumb, not least dumb, but I kind of wanted to transition off John because Jimbo Fisher is on my list.
We can do that. And Rocky Top T saying Rocky Top Tom saying worst dumb coaching decision all year, keeping Joe Milton at quarterback after it's clear he can't cut the cheese. I think cut the cheese means something else. Caleb?
Okay, so John, I'm with you. Now, there was one I almost considered, and it was, remember the 4th and 2 where Max Johnson tripped? And that was very reminiscent of the Arkansas run play where Clint Sterner tripped because why would you call a stretch run play? Why wouldn't you just go straight up the middle or a play action or something? They call it a stretch running play to the left, which when you have the best edge rushers in the SEC, and you call – I couldn't figure that out. But Jimbo Fisher mainly made the list because it's almost halftime. Texas A&M is up 10-7. There's a minute 30 left in the half, and Texas A&M has all 3 timeouts left. Jimbo Fisher decides it's 4th down. I'm going to let the clock run all the way down, and then I'm going to just play for halftime and waste a possession. I don't understand coaches not thinking possessions don't matter in college football.
You suck, you jackass.
That's what I mean. He just seems disengaged. Like, I really don't care. We'll just let that clock run. I got nothing for now.
Yeah, totally a loss. Now, the other one, I wanted to know what you guys thought about this, but I did not mind Dan Lanning going for the win at Washington late. I talked about it yesterday. I said, look, if you play percentages, if you're on the road in an environment like that, you have a better chance of converting that 4th and 3 than you do of winning in overtime. I do mind him not going for the field goal at the end of the first half against Washington, Oregon and Washington. It was 22-18. Oregon was going to get the ball to start the second half. They were averaging 5 yards a carry. They get inside the red zone, and they throw it 4 straight times, a la Butch Jones against Florida in 2017. And I thought, 1, you got to run it once or twice. 2, you kick the field goal in that situation knowing you're going to only be down by 1 and get the ball to start the second half. That was just next level done by Dan Lanning.
Caleb, don't you think we coaches get caught up in a game where offense prevails and they just think, can't win with field goals, got to score a touchdown every chance we get. They pretty much disavow any use of the field goal kicker.
I have noticed that, and it seems to be a trend. I noticed it in the NFL as well. It just seems like they're passing on pretty easy 3-point field goals instead of they think they can get it further down the field and score touchdowns. I get it. I mean, you don't want to be in the red zone kicking field goals, but I mean, 3 points is 3 points. Last I heard, whoever scores the most points wins.
And possessions are possessions. You're getting the ball to start the second half. And if it's a game of touchdowns and you're only going to be down 1 after kicking this field goal, take the points in that situation.
I think it's particularly at the end of the half, it's a momentum buster when you don't get anything out of a drive. It's a last-ditch drive, and so I agree with you. I would have kicked a field goal there, and then I got the ball back, and you sell that to your team. Hey, we've got the momentum. We've cut the lead to 1. We're going to get the ball. Let's go get them.
Exactly.
Caleb, who else made some dumb coaching decisions?
Wait, is that a that's crazy or a you suck?
Oh, well, that's definitely
You suck.
yeah. It's crazy too, but crazy means that he just lost track of the game. The jackass one means he just didn't show off his higher intelligence.
Could you change that? That's crazy to that's insano.
Yes, I can change it to that's insano.
Okay,
Captain Insano shows no mercy. Anybody?
I got it. Yeah, Captain Insano. That was from I can't remember the movie.
Waterboy.
Waterboy. That's right. All right, Captain Insano. John's new
perfectly nickname. As John, I know you're from there. I feel like Waterboy's a great documentary on what life is like in Cajun, Louisiana. And but
that's another show.
I'm sorry.
That's another show.
Oh, so the other one, and I feel like he makes this list every week, and I know y'all like him, but Sam Pittman. I got to bring Sam Pittman in. Everybody's going to give him praise for Arkansas playing Alabama close, but it's the first half. It's 4th and 1 at the 34. Alabama's up 21-6. The game's getting away. Sam Pittman runs the clock down and then calls a timeout only to punt the ball. And
that's crazy.
Yes, like it's Alabama. You got to play field position with Alabama because we're 2 evenly matched teams here. No, you're not. You got to go for points in possessions against Alabama.
Yeah, that's almost the flip side of the Dad Lanning critique. Arkansas was obviously the inferior opponent down there, heavy underdog. You got to have a sense of where your team is, where it stands, and what's going on in the game. I didn't think Sam Pittman did very well in that game. I don't think Sam Pittman's doing well this season. I think Sam Pittman is coaching himself into trouble. He gained a lot of favorable attention, as he should have, for ending a Vanderbilt-like losing streak when he arrived at Arkansas. Had lost 20-something straight SEC games, kind of turned it around. But what has he done lately? The program's headed in the wrong direction, and I think the team is better than what its record is.
All right, Caleb, what else you got?
All right, so a couple more. Lance Leipold, who I actually think is a good coach at Kansas, but I had to drop a football IQ one on him. Here's my biggest pet peeve, and coaches still do it, and it's next level stupid. When you burn a timeout late in the game to talk about a 4th down play, knowing you're going to need that timeout if you don't get it, it's so dumb, and they do it all the time. I don't know how coaches don't know math, but this is peak evidence of how coaches. It's the most consistently stupid mistake. So Kansas gets a 9-yard completion down 36-32 to Oklahoma State, brings up a 4th and 1, and Lance Leipold takes a timeout to talk about a 4th and 1 play. You should already have the 4th and 1 play prepared. You should already have it ready to go. And they don't get it. And by the time they get the ball back, there's 15 seconds left instead of a minute left because of that.
You can't go through watching a football Saturday without seeing that happen.
That's
and coaches always tell us, we've got to play for every situation. We got a 2-point conversion play. I remember last year when LSU beat Alabama and went for the 2, Brian Kelly talked about, we had this play. We thought it might work. Prepared for it. You're prepared for 4th and 1 against any defense. You've got to play. It's almost like, oops, I forgot about that play we had. It happens. Exactly. It happens again and again. I don't get it either.
I don't know how you don't have a 4th down call and a 2-point conversion, maybe 2 or 3 of them, ready to go at all times in case you need it. It should be in your back pocket. Put it on that clipboard that you lean on. It shouldn't be difficult. The call should be made immediately. What else you got, Caleb?
All right, and here's the final one. And I've been all over the place on not going for it or going for it, but I had to drop a football IQ one to Deion Sanders because you don't blow a 29-0 lead unless you make some coaching blunders. And the key coaching blunder is at the opening drive of the second half, excuse me. They go down to the Sanford 45. They're still up 29-0, and they bring up a 4th and 2. It's 4th and 2. Now, 95% of the time, I do believe you go for it in that situation. I don't believe in punting. But the 5% is when you're up 29-0 and you don't want to give the other team any momentum whatsoever. And he goes for it on 4th and 2, and he has Shedeur Sanders in a deep back in shotgun, do a 5-step drop. He doesn't have a blocker to pick up the blitz. So Shedeur Sanders gets sacked, and that totally changes the game. I have no problem with him going for it on the second 4th down that they didn't get later in the game because that's flow of the game slipping away. But this 4th down, where if you punt it, Stanford's down 29-0, and they're going to have to go to the length of the field just to make it a 3-score game. It was just so stupid to go for it in that situation.
I believe what Deion Sanders was thinking. I think he'd pulled off his thinking cap, and I only saw the first half, so Colorado was beating Stanford to such a degree. I don't think the game was over in Deion's mind. Yeah, let's see how many points we can score here. I just don't think he had any idea that Stanford could come back. Now he does.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other point of this, and I just want to point on the message board, is also leaving Travis Hunter on so many plays on the field and then being shocked when he's just back off injury and that he's not going to get burned on defense when you're doing that. Of course he is.
Yeah. Now, one, Travis points out real quick that I want to address. Absolutely hate the fact on 3rd and 15 we call a run play. Hasn't worked yet. Almost did against A&M. Still didn't work. It almost worked. I don't think at that point you're even trying. This speaks to Joe Milton. I don't think you're trying to convert. I think you're trying to play a field position game. And Josh Heupel, John, that's not his nature. So he had to wince a little bit when he had to call that play.
Well, let's face it. We talked about a lot already. But Joe Heupel is having to scheme around Joe Milton.
Josh Heupel.
He's having to scheme around a depleted receiving core. And I get emails criticizing Josh Heupel for his play calling. Well, you got to understand, this is not the typical Josh Heupel offense. He's not calling plays for the team he had last season. He's calling plays for this one. He's trying to work around his deficiencies, and that can be very challenging at times.
For John Adams, each and every Tuesday, all you have to do is click like and subscribe. Be sure and subscribe. We want to make sure that you get the notifications. We got the Vol Report with Cooper Mays, the Vol Report with Jacob Warren coming out today. Also, we'll visit with Fred White later today. So a lot going on. You're going to miss it if you're not subscribed. So click on the subscribe button. If you're on one of our audio platforms, please leave us a review. We greatly appreciate that. Coming up, we'll visit with Blake Toppmeyer of the Gannett News Service, who John knows as well. And so we've got a lot going on. Anything I should ask Blake to try to stump him, John?
You might ask him about his new koi pond.
Well, what though? How could I ask around it and be very coy myself?
Like
that.
How about this?
Or was I just
Blake,
fishing for a good joke?
Let's kill that one, Dave. How about if you say, Blake, I heard you had a koi fish that was almost it's almost Cam Newton-like. Tell us about that.
Thank you, John. Have a great day, sir. I appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. More to come, including Blake Toppmeyer. And we'll get into the Brock Bauer discussion just a little bit more. How much does that open the SEC East? And Josh Heupel, can he beat Alabama with defense and a very conservative offensive scheme like he did against A&M? I tend to think not, but we shall see. 2 minutes back with you. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place, with a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All righty, here we go. Back and asking you on the message board, who has the biggest impact in the second half of the season for Tennessee? We had some votes for James Pearce. We had some votes for Joe Milton in a negative fashion. Who else did we have votes for earlier on the program?
Well, we mentioned Dee Williams, Cooper Mays, and
kind of has to be Cooper mays now that I look at it. We said
we forgot one key player though, which was Aaron Beasley.
Oh, we did leave out Aaron Beasley.
We got to give him a shout out too, and that's hard for me, guys. As y'all know.
Couldn't we say Kamal Haddon, though? Because, I mean, Haddon, if he is not ready to go, who does Tennessee go to next? And he's had his struggles, but he's playing really well at this point.
Kamal Haddon is definitely there. Now, Kamal Haddon is no Alante Taylor, who was a shutdown corner without needing a pass rush 2 years ago for Tennessee. And if Tennessee has Alante Taylor last year, plus, they probably beat South Carolina. I will say that. But Kamal Haddon has been an incredible turnaround player. And people don't like us talking, but Dave, come on. You always want at least one of your cornerbacks to have a little talk, little moxie, to do a little trash talking to get in players' heads, don't you? That's kind of the nature of good cornerbacks throughout history.
I'm all for trash talking. I've got no problem with that. I know
you just got to play the game. Just shut up and play the game.
No. I absolutely love some trash talking. I got no problem with that. And there seems to be Gabe Judy Lawley gets a vote as far as those players that Tennessee couldn't do without or could affect the second half of the season. Does he affect the second half of the season? I don't know, but I will tell you this about Gabe Judy Lawley. And guys, I told you this in the summer. His selflessness about, hey, I don't care if I'm a starter. I don't care if I'm a safety. I don't care if I'm a corner. I just want to help this Tennessee team win. How many times, Caleb, do transfers say that? Usually it's about getting me to the next level. It's not about the team. I just thought those quotes spoke very strongly about Gabe Judy Lawley, who had an interception against A&M. Really like his play. Really like a lot about him. We're going to go with Blake Toppmeyer now, who joins us. He is the SEC columnist for USA Today and the Gannett News Service. Blake, we appreciate the time. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. You guys?
Never better. You wrote a column about Tennessee beating Texas A&M with a very different approach than they had last year, and that was a defensive type of game plan, ball control. Seems weird even saying that with Josh Heupel, but they did do that against Texas A&M. Can they do that against Alabama?
I don't think so, not to that extent. If you look at the last 8 games Nick Saban has lost at Alabama dating to 2018, in those games, Alabama allowed an average of 41 points to their opponents. And obviously, Tennessee's 52-49 victory last year factored into that. So historically, if you want to beat Nick Saban at Alabama, you need to do it by piling up some points. You need to do it with good quarterback play. There's not many times Nick Saban has lost over the years to an opponent who had a quarterback who didn't play very well. If we think maybe back early in Nick Saban's dynasty, a loss or two to LSU that were kind of those low-scoring grudge matches, sure, those come to mind. But like I said, here in the last 5-6 years, if you want to beat Bama, you got to be scoring.
Yes, I remember that 9-6 Alabama LSU number 1 versus number 2 matchup. And I jokingly always question Les Miles' intellect because he was in the Coaches Bowl and voted for the rematch with Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. I'm like, there's no way I'm voting for that rematch if I'm Les Miles. I mean, I cannot believe he did that. But yeah, Blake, this is going to be the craziest thing I'm going to say. Because the storyline all last year, all offseason was Alabama going back to more ball control. But right now, who's a more ball control team?
Yeah, I think it's
Alabama.
I think Tennessee has more of the game manager style quarterback that a lot of us had in mind when we heard Alabama going to play like retro ball, bully ball, vintage Saban ball, Saban dynasty, early days ball. Like we had in mind that like Greg McElroy, game manager type of quarterback. And I'm not equating Joe Milton to Greg McElroy, but I am saying that like of the two quarterbacks, I think Milton is more the game manager sort. I mean, with what Alabama's doing with Jalen Milroe, for better or worse, is they're firing deep shot after deep shot after deep shot because that's what Jalen Milroe does, right? They're letting him run it a little bit. They are getting Jace McClellan involved. He's been running it a little bit better lately. But largely their offense, and we saw this especially against Texas A&M, was fire it deep. And if that doesn't work, fire it deep again. Alabama's taking the shots because they feel like they have to take the shots. I don't know if this is the way they expected necessarily to have to play. And with Tennessee, they're built around their run game. And it does feel like, more of a ball control game manager type of style.
What do you think of Jalen Milroe at this point? I know it was really herky-jerky the way they found him. I know that he had, I think, I'll have to look it up, but I think it was 28 turnovers in a game last year. But when you look at him, Blake, do you feel like Alabama has found their quarterback and that his upside is pretty good? Or do you think they're just kind of biding time until somebody else emerges, maybe even next year, maybe a freshman, whatever? Do you like Milroe's upside?
I like it better than anybody else that they have. I'll say that. Like there's no one better lurking in the shadows on this team. We saw that in the South Florida game. I'm not going to say that was like intentional Nick Saban genius type of thing. Like sometimes we sort of kind of box ourselves into a corner in an attempt to describe everything he does as genius. Like they made a change for whatever reason after losing to Texas. I think they wanted to see if they had something better. And that game against USF proved they didn't. Like Ty Simpson's not better. Tyler Buckner, I don't even know why we needed to see it. If you watch Notre Dame the last couple of years, Tyler Buckner wasn't better, but we saw it against South Florida. He's the best they have. And he does do a number of things pretty well. Like he throws an elite deep ball. Like if there's one thing I think he does better than Bryce Young, it's throw the deep ball. I mean, Bryce Young was fine throwing it deep, but that wasn't really like Bryce Young's calling card. So he does have that. He has the breakaway speed. Bryce was really nimble in the pocket, made just brilliant plays on the move. He's kind of a magic man back there. Milroe's not like that. He's not going to, move around in the pocket as much. But if he wants to break it and go, I mean, he's got better straight line speed. than almost any quarterback in the country, probably. So he does some things really well. I thought he maybe was settling in based on the way he played against Texas A&M. Like, you take away one bad interception in that game, which I know you probably shouldn't take that away. That did happen, right? It could have been costly. It wasn't. But aside from that one play, I thought he played very, very well in that win against Texas A&M. And then I thought he played well in the first half against Arkansas on Saturday. He didn't do much in the second half, and that's part of the reason why Arkansas was able to get back in that game. But I think that's sort of going to happen when you have a quarterback who so much of their skill set is based around throwing it deep. Like, they're going to have a half where they disappear because they're maybe not dialing up as many deep shots or not hitting as many deep shots. But yeah, he's the best quarterback Alabama has. Whether that changes, next year, I don't know. But he's the guy for the rest of the way this year.
Blake, are we seeing, this is a weird thing to say, but are we seeing Jalen Milroe just get better before our eyes? And I mean that better to the point where he can go from being just a game manager to actually being a guy that wins you games. I mean, from last year's Texas A&M game where I admit I wrote him off immediately because that's one of the worst quarterbacks games I've ever seen by a quarterback in SEC football history. And then struggling against Texas in the fourth quarter this year, it seems like after he came back off the bench, they figured out exactly how to use him. And I mean, are we seeing like maybe next year all SEC potential if he keeps getting better the way he has been?
Yeah, I don't know about all SEC, and I would submit a number of Tennessee performances from 2017 to 2020 for that list of worst quarterbacking performances in SEC history over a 4-year span there. They might claim all the top 10 spots from the Jarrett Garantano and others era. But I digress. I think you're right with Milroe getting better before our eyes. I think the misconception after the A&M game, and I may have fallen into this trap too, was assuming he had it all figured out. Like, after watching him really be a driving force to Alabama winning that game on the road, it was really Jalen Milroe, Jermaine Burton, and Alabama's defensive line were the three things they had going for them in that game. So I think the tendency was to think, well, Milroe's got it figured out. He's, stardom is here. I don't think it's going to be like that straight line trajectory. I think it's going to be a little up and down. But I do think it's going to be like that 2-step forward, 1-step backward type of progression from this point with him now. Like, he is getting better. He is improving. There might be moments where it doesn't look like it, but I think he's a undeniably better quarterback now than he was in week 2 against Texas. There was a time where this guy, I think he struggled to read the field. And Alabama's OC, Tommy Rees, I don't think was helping him early in the season either. They weren't doing much to design run with him, which is criminal if you're the offensive coordinator, not incorporating some designed run when Jalen Milroe is your quarterback. And they weren't taking enough deep shots. Now, if James Franklin were here, he would tell us that you can't design play calls where the play is chuck it deep, right? I think the rest of us think like, oh, yes, you can call up some plays where you put your quarterback in position to throw it deep. And to Tommy Rees's credit, there has been a noticeable shift in that approach since the Texas game. I don't know if Alabama would admit it, but if you just believe what you see with your eyes, like, I think they are positioning Milroe to do some of the things he does best more often. They're letting him, let it rip back there. And some guys have made plays at the wide receiver spots.
Blake Toppmeyer, SEC columnist for Gannett News Services. Blake, we were kicking this around earlier, getting back to Tennessee for a second. The player that will have the biggest impact, and it can be a positive or a negative in the second half of the season for Tennessee. We talked about Cooper Mays. Of course, Tennessee looks like a different team with him in there. James Pearce looks like an elite edge rusher. Or it could even be Joe Milton will have a negative impact. Who has the biggest impact, pro or con, for the Vols the remainder of this season, you think?
I guess if I could cheat, I would say a combination of Pierce and Tyler Barron. I think that the defensive line, the edge rushers, have to remain disruptive for Tennessee, for their defense to continue performing the way it has been. And those guys have been integral to those efforts. I mean, I was on my list of concerns for Tennessee coming into the season. I thought pass rush and defensive line, I don't know if they ranked number one on my list, but they were on the list. Like when we think back to last year, they had a pretty good pass rush last season that was instrumental in victories over LSU, over Clemson, over Kentucky. And a guy in the middle of all that was Byron Young. So they lose their best pass rusher off of last season. And I thought, okay, how are they going to rally past that? And now you look at it this year, their pass rush this year is undeniably and demonstrably better than what it was last season. And in a large part, that's a credit to James Pearce and Tyler Barron. I think those guys have to continue to play well. When you get disruption up front, it makes your whole defense play better. And I'm not saying that the secondary isn't better this year than last year. I think they are. I think it's an improved group. But I think so much of that is tied in to what those guys are doing up front. If that stops, Tennessee's defense could regress, and they can't afford for it to regress with what's going on offensively right now. They have to remain this improved defense like we've seen this year. And we saw, in flashes last year, the defense had some good games, but they weren't consistent. They disappear against some of the better quarterbacks, some of the better opponents. But that defense has been pretty steady this year, and I credit those two guys I mentioned, Pearce and Barron. They got to keep it up.
Blake, great stuff as always. Do you have an early feel for this Tennessee-Alabama game?
Yeah, I guess, inside Bryant-Denny, an Alabama team that you would think would be hell-bent on revenge, and when I combine the uncertainty of Tennessee's offense, I think I like Alabama to win a close one. I just don't I don't know that you can beat Alabama 21-17. Alabama's their offense is not as good as it's been the last several years with Tua, with Mac Jones, with Bryce Young. They've had offensive regression too. However, I do think if you want to beat Alabama this year, it probably needs to look a little something like Texas, a 34-24 type of game. Based on what we saw Saturday, Tennessee may need to win with its defense, may need to win in the 20s. And I don't know that you can do that inside Bryant-Denny.
I think Tennessee's defense has to set up a score, either score themselves or they need a strip sack deep in Alabama territory. I think there has to be a defensive play that leads to 7 for Tennessee. Blake, great stuff as always. How do we follow your work?
Yeah, you can find me throughout the USA Today network there in Knoxville. You can find me at knoxnews.com. They always do a great job promoting my work. And I'm on X at @btoppmeyer.
X, you made the move. You're the first person that said X, formerly Twitter. I like that, Blake.
I think this is the first time. I think this is the first time I've done that. I guess for some reason I decided now is the time.
I was wondering when I was going to do that myself just over the weekend. Blake, great stuff, buddy. Have a great day.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
He's Blake Toppmeyer. I'm Dave Hooker. Let's talk some Tennessee basketball. Tennessee basketball ranked pretty high. What do you think of the basketball Vols and the respect they got out? They got right out of the chute, Caleb, as Tennessee's ranking top 10 in both polls.
Well, I've talked for a while about the renaissance in college football where it comes to basically player teams being more defensive oriented the last couple of years amidst all the talk that, it's becoming more offense and defense is a thing. And now you're seeing defense play a much bigger role in college football, not just with Tennessee. There's a renaissance in college basketball too, Dave. In the era of one and dones, and you know this, the rankings were solely based on, it was basically whatever the 247 sports recruiting rankings was, where we're going to be reflected in the AP poll, wasn't it? In the era of one and done basketball. That's not a thing right now. And you're seeing that specifically with Tennessee. Tennessee lost Olivier Cumwa to transfer. They lost Julian Phillips to transfer. Now, they added 3 transfers, none of whom were 4 or 5 stars you would consider on 247 Sports Composite, but they're top 10 because they have Santiago Vescovi and Josiah Jordan-James back. So this is solely about belief in Rick Barnes' development and experience of players coming back, which is why they're top 10. They're number 9 in the AP poll, number 10 in the coaches. And just for context, guys, Florida Atlantic is top 10. Now, I know they went all the way to the national title game last year, but typically college basketball rankings aren't going to put you in the top 10. They're not going to base anything on what you did last year. They're going to solely base it on recruiting. they're basing it off experience. And I think they're starting to realize in this age of NIL, with the renaissance that it's happening that I'm talking about, college basketball players are realizing there's more value if they're a good player staying for a year in college rather than going to the NBA and maybe not even being drafted, where it's so selective, more so than even the NFL.
Needs to be a balance. There just needs to be a balance of guys that have been around that want to win for the program, and maybe a guy who steps in and says, this was my best NIL deal. Now you hope to win him over and that he wants to win for the fans and the fan support that you get at a place like Tennessee or some of the other high-level basketball programs. But there has to be some sort of balance. And I think Tennessee has I don't want to call it senior leadership, but the upperclassmen leadership to guide some transfers into a very good season. And I wouldn't want to be Kentucky, because they've only won one championship. Calipari has under his system. That includes his time at Memphis, because I just don't know that they love Kentucky. And then the offset of that is I don't know that they gel as quickly when you have to change over your roster each and every year. But I also don't know necessarily that I want to be the team that just completely relies on high school recruiting. There has to be a balance. Talk about your balance. Your balance will go higher. As Zen Sports, the new sportsbook in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with our cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. And refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Download that app. Use the promo code HOOKED. And remember to support our sponsors. They're right below. That's why we're here. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. So if I give you these choices, a tournament team, Sweet 16, Final Four. And at this point, it's very, very early, Caleb. Where would you have the Vols?
Sweet 16. Now, that is with the knowledge and the caveat that we know Rick Barnes underachieves in the tournament. But I think Rick Barnes is having his own reformation, which you don't usually have it. How old is he? 66, 68, something like that?
7, I believe.
Okay, so I was in between. So 67. People usually don't change their philosophies at 67. And I think Rick Barnes is changing his philosophy. The changes that he got, now he still instinctually can't help himself. He said last week, we're deeper than we've ever been on the perimeter since I've been here, but the defense is not where it needs to be. He still loves that defense. He still loves that mid-range, but he constructed his personnel based on an inside-out game where you got a lot of options from three. And I did not see that coming from Rick Barnes during this time, at this stage in his career. I mean, it's very much Nick Saban embracing the spread offense when he was 65, which he did. Nick Saban had already had an established career and said, I'm going to do this.
Great point. It's a great point. And actually he's 69. I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's 69. Okay, so Barnes is pushing 70. And so who at 70 is able to is willing to do that? And because a lot of our criticisms of Barnes, Dave, for years has been good basketball coach, but thoroughly stubborn in what he believes in and absolutely refuses to believe that the game is different. And look what he's doing right now. At least the way he's constructed his personnel suggests he knows the game is different. Now, he was never like Nick Saban. He never fought for rules changes or opposed rules changes to make the game different. He just kept coaching his style even when the rules changed. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe he knows the flow of college basketball. Maybe he finally realizes, I can't fully rely on the mid-range because, he has been so reliant on the mid-range for so long, and it's been costly for Tennessee.
Yep. The Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to Hemp House Chat. That's with 2 T's, hemphousechat.com, and you'll be taken care of. They've got the Big Orange Crunch. Let me pull that up. Check this out. The Big Orange Crunch is right here. You'll absolutely love it. And don't forget to use that promo code Hooked. Anything else on hoops, Caleb, from you, sir?
Yeah, and here's the real standout. Dave, Tennessee is the highest ranked SEC team. Arkansas second. Tennessee is right now going to be favored to win the SEC in basketball, which they're usually the top 3 or 4 with Kentucky, Alabama, or whatever, or Arkansas. They're going to be the favorites to win the SEC. Who saw that coming?
I did not. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker with you weekdays at 10 a.m. Please take a second, hit the subscribe button. If you're new to the program, we greatly appreciate that. Weekdays, 10 a.m. and wherever you stream. So give us, if you like the show, we'd appreciate a review. We appreciate having the notifications on is the big one, because what I've started doing lately, which you may not know about, is for those of you that are on an audio-only platform, I've been dropping our Celebrate 98 series on the various audio-only channels. So we would love for you to hear that. We've already got Dwayne Goodrich up, and we'll have more as we go along. So for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation